Well, good evening, good Saturday evening to everyone. It is will.i.am, the Bowtie Sober Guy, coming at you live here on Facebook. Excited to have you join me. And as I had posted earlier today, tonight we're going to be talking about expectations in relationships. And it's kind of funny because I, as you probably noticed, have already have an unmet expectation for you in the fact that I don't have a bow tie on. I know, can you believe it? I actually did not wear one today, and I was going to change. Before I did this, but then I thought, wait a minute. I'm going to be talking about expectations, and the expectation that you probably had when you started this or joined is that I was going to be in a bow tie, and I'm not. So I did not meet your expectations. So I apologize for that. But you do get to see me in normal gear tonight. So I'm happy to be here and excited to be here and excited to share a little bit of information on expectations in relationships. And so with no further ado, we're going to jump in and get started. Expectations are an interesting thing. We all have them. And we have unrealistic expectations, and we have realistic expectations, and really what expectations are is really a way for us to try to control the future. We think that something is going to happen. We hope that something is going to happen. We hope that somebody behaves in a certain way or says a certain thing or something happens to us. And one of the things too is we'll talk a lot about how we have expectations of other people, but we also have to remember one of the important things about expectations is expectations of ourselves. I know this is something I struggle with a lot, is unrealistic expectations of me and personally of myself. And, those can be very dangerous to me and my psyche and my how I feel about things. And so expectations are something that is really can be a really bad thing. One of the things I've learned in the last couple of years in my recovery is that there's a great saying that goes around all the recovery circles, but it says expectations are resentments with training wheels or in training. And it's really, really true. And as I go through and I get healthier and I get more healing and I go through and we look at all those things that have happened and live this living in this bow tie life that I want to live, and looking back at resentments, it's really crazy how many of those really started from having expectations and having expectations of other people, having expectations of myself. So we really have to look at all those different things that we have. And, there's probably trivial ones. There's things like you may in one of your relationships, your spouse expects you to take out the trash and you expect them to have breakfast served for you every day. Well, is that realistic? Maybe it is in your relationship, but if it's something where one person thinks that and the other person thinks, well, no, it's not my job to cook breakfast every day for you and to serve you. Thanks for jumping on, Lisa. I appreciate that. And I get it. I absolutely get it. And you are so right. The struggle can be very real. And that's why I'm glad to be talking about expectations tonight, because we do have a tendency to want to place those on other people and have those expectations that they are going to be the way we want them to be. And you know what, that's not really fair, because if you think about a relationship, so you have two people in a relationship, and it might be a spouse, it might be a child, a son, a daughter, it might be your parents, it might be a friend, it might be a sibling, it might be someone at work, who knows? But we have a tendency as human beings to want other people to respond, react, and be the way we want them to, so that we are in control. And that is an unhealthy expectation. Instead, I challenge you to think about, how is it that I can come into a relationship without having those expectations? Or, this is even better, being able to communicate what those expectations are. One of the things that I have, that I try to work on all the time, and I am still a work in progress with this, is open communication when it comes to those kinds of things. Because I am really bad at thinking that everything is going to be how I want it to be rather than how it is. And that, again, that comes back to that control. That comes back to me trying to set unrealistic expectations for other people. And that's just not fair, because what happens is, again, in a relationship, there's two sides. So if both sides are still are dealing with having these expectations of the other side, what's going to happen in that relationship? And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it takes that open dialogue, that open communication to really be able to get to the bottom of what we expect in the relationship with each other. And sometimes, you see it in teams. Like, look at sports teams. You have all kinds of crazy expectations there, from the coaches to the players between each other. And there's so many different ways, because we're all humans. We all have emotions, we all have feelings, we have all these beliefs that we bring into the relationship. And we take all that and then we throw on these expectations onto other people. I looked up the definition of the word expectation, and it told me online that beliefs that something will happen in the future. How much can we control in the future? There's not a lot. There's so many things that can happen, that may never happen. But we want to control that. But that's what an expectation is us trying to take control of the future. Well, we don't know what that's going to be. And it's also us trying to take control of the other person in the relationship. And so, and really thinking about how it should be in relation to us. Is that fair? Is that really fair? Is that something that is fair to the other person? And the other way around, if that other person has those unhealthy and unrealistic expectations of you, how fair is that? It's not. It's not fair at all, because we all bring our own stuff, we all bring our own selves into a relationship. And that's where the open communication and dialogue really, really come to play. The other thing that I love about this open communication, and when it comes to expectations, is in an expectation, we want to be right. We want it to be our way. Well, so does the other person. And instead of looking at these expectations that way, what if we are in a relationship and we actually try to live in that relationship with mutual understanding? Because in mutual understanding, it doesn't mean one person's right, the other person's wrong. I talked one night, last week or something, about this black and white thinking. It was on the goals and resolutions night, and how we're black and white, yes or no. And why is it that we have to think like that? Why can't we come into a relationship and try to live in that relationship with mutual understanding? Show respect for each other, trust for one another, love each other, and have an expectation that they're going to do the same for you. So, because that's fair, that's a win-win solution. That is each person being able to share in this open dialogue and this open communication to get to a point of mutual understanding instead of it's my way or the highway. And I thought like that for a long time in my life, a long time, where I would think it had to be my way. And I still struggle with it. I still want things to go my way, and I still try to get my way. But I've learned in the last few years that, you know what, it's about having that mutual understanding, because if I don't, and if I'm in a relationship, again, it doesn't matter who it's with. It could be our kids, it could be Paula, it could be friends, co-workers, it could be anything. But when I go into those relationships with expectations and they're not met, regardless if they were realistic or unrealistic, when I go in and they're unmet, all of a sudden that affects me. And I have a choice over that too. And that'll be another night, another Facebook Live, that we talk about those choices and how we respond and react. But I have a choice, and a lot of times for us, what we feel is we feel sadness, disappointment, frustration. Man, how many times do you just get frustrated because you want it to be a certain way? And instead we can go at it and say, you know what, I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm not going to get disappointed. I am going to try to understand what that other person is trying to share with me and communicate with me, and understand what their side looks like, rather than having to be right, having to have it my way. Because that's really scary for me. When I get into that place and I don't get it, then I can get into, these pits of sadness and despair and all of that because, oh my gosh, life is not happening the way I want it to happen. Well, I don't have that control. I don't have that control in life. I have control over managing and working on what are my expectations. Are they realistic or unrealistic? And one of the things too is I've talked a lot, and I mentioned that I would, but about all these expectations of others. But how many of you think that you have fair expectations of yourself? That's something that I struggled with for a really, really long time, where I had these completely unrealistic expectations of who I was and what I was supposed to do. And of course, I wouldn't meet those expectations of myself. So what would I do? I would beat myself up over and over and over. And that's just a vicious circle, because then I beat myself up, then I'm not meeting that expectation, and now I'm beating myself up worse. And it's just this horrible circle that just continues to spiral out of control. And not spiral upward, unfortunately, but really spiral downward. And so expectations are something that we really have to look at. And again, I think there's healthy expectations in any kind of a relationship. You want to be in a relationship that's loving, that's kind, that's open, that's vulnerable, that's sharing, that has communication. Those are all very good expectations to have, and we need to communicate that with the other person that's involved in that relationship. But unhealthy expectations are just not good. One of the best ways that I've been able to really look at this is in a relationship is, how do I appreciate the differences? So many times I thought, that's an unmet expectation. And that's what I would focus on, but in a very negative way. And I would shine this dark light on it saying, you're not doing it the way it's supposed to be done. You're not doing the way that I want it done. But instead, I turn that around, and I work on this, but I try to turn that around and really appreciate that difference. Because it's those differences that make us unique and make us different. And part of the reason that we want to be in relationships with others is because they are different. So now we can take those differences and appreciate them. And then that goes back into, if all of a sudden now I'm in mutual understanding in a relationship and I can appreciate those differences, I see that completely different, for lack of a better word. But I see it in a way that is open and encouraging, and not in a way that I want to squash it, that I want to change it, that I want to make it anything than what it is. And that's what we have the ability to do. So really appreciating what those differences are. Really goofy example is, I have certain things or certain ways that I want to organize, say, the pantry. Okay. Well, my wife doesn't. She does it differently. Well, I could have this horrible expectation that has to be done my way, and this we don't do this. I don't care about the pantry, but it's such a simple thing, but that can cause fights. It can cause bickering that turn into fights, because enough bickering, and all of a sudden now it blows up into something bigger. And instead, I can appreciate the fact that the other person wants it to be a certain way. Okay, does it matter? Does it really, really matter? Well, sometimes in my head it does. Or another simple one, that we have some friends that's really funny. They always they talk about their differences with laundry. It's really a funny thing, and it's gotten to a point now where it's kind of an inside joke. And but he wants to do the laundry a certain way, and she does it a very different way. And it's caused this turmoil in their relationship. Now, again, it's turned into something funny because they've communicated about it. But early on, it was something that, he wanted it done his way. She wanted to do it her way. And really, it's laundry. It's how our clothes are folded or put together or ironed or whatever it might be. and it used to blow up into this big thing. Well, now it's not, but it's those little things like that where we may not even notice that we have this unrealistic expectation. And again, if we let those things lie long enough, they can turn into a resentment. And resentments are powerful negative emotions that can truly take over your life, and nobody wants that. So I encourage you to have that open dialogue, have that open communication, and that appreciation for the other person and the way that they want to do whatever it is, or the way they think about whatever it is, or just really appreciating that. I love that word, but appreciating that part of it rather than putting that dark light on it. And again, look internally yourself, at yourself, and do you have those unrealistic expectations? And how do you handle those? I have some good friends that I talk to on a regular basis, and we all struggle with that on putting ourselves down about not feeling like we've met these expectations of ourselves. And the thing that I share with this one person and specifically a lot is that, you know what, it's about progress, not perfection. I'm never going to be perfect. I'm going to always be working on my recovery. I'm going to always be trying to be a better person. So I'm not going to get it right every single day, especially every hour or every minute of every single day. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fall back into past patterns or behaviors or think reactions and that kind of a thing. But what's different now is that I can recognize those, just like expectations. I can recognize those and I can make a change. But I don't have to beat myself up when it happens, because that's not good either. That's not healthy. Learn from it, grow from it, and take those experiences and make yourself better going forward. And so I wanted to end tonight before I get to my quotes, because I do have a couple of quotes, but I had a couple of questions that I wanted to pose to you to kind of think about when it comes to expectations. And the first one is it's really about looking internally and asking yourself the question, do I have or have I placed any unrealistic expectations on any relationships that I have? And again, those relationships might be with coworkers, might be with a spouse, might be with a child, might be with a parent, sibling, whatever, friends. Can you pinpoint any specific unrealistic expectations that maybe are not getting met, that you've never communicated, and maybe are not fair? Maybe they are unfair. And the second question, this is a much more challenging question, is maybe go to someone like that. Go to your spouse. Go to a friend. Go to someone that you're close to, your siblings, your parents or something, and ask them, do they feel like you have placed any unrealistic expectations on them? And listen for the response. See what they have to say, because that's not a time that you're going to beat yourself up. It's not a time that they have to beat yourself up. It's a time to grow. It's a time to learn and to really look inside and think, okay, where does that come from? Why do I do that? Is it real, or is it something that's fabricated? Do they misinterpret something? Because what that does, as soon as you open that, you ask them that question, now all of a sudden you have a chance to have this open dialogue and gain mutual understanding of each other. And I got to tell you, in a relationship, when you can gain mutual understanding of each other, no matter what it is, no matter who thinks what, doesn't matter how polar opposite they are or how closely matched they are, it doesn't matter. When you have that mutual understanding, it opens up so many doors of other communication that you can have. And that's an unbelievable experience to go through, because now all of a sudden you can start having different conversations. So my two quotes I was going to end with. One is this Lisa Kleypas, who's an author, wrote a book called Love in the Afternoon, and it says, you are your own worst enemy. We're talking about our own personal expectations of ourselves. You are your own worst enemy. If you can learn to stop expecting impossible perfection, in yourself and others, you may find the happiness that has always eluded you. And it's so true. We start taking those expectations, those unrealistic ones, and nothing is going to be perfect. We can live in this joy. We can have unbelievable relationships. And the second one actually comes from the Bible, and it's the NIV version. It's Romans 15:7, and it says, "Accept one another, then just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God." So it's all about acceptance, accepting others and appreciating the differences. And when we can get to that, and we can have that mutual understanding, all of a sudden our relationships can prosper and thrive and not just go through the daily grind. So with that, before I sign off, I want to apologize again. You know what? I'm not on my bow tie. I'm the bow tie sober guy. But because tonight's lesson was on expectations, I decided to not meet your expectation and wear a bow tie. Next time I get on, of course, I will have one. But until then, I want to thank you all for jumping on and watching my Facebook Live, and look forward to seeing you all soon. If you need anything in the meantime, please feel free to message me. I'd be happy to set up some time to talk with you and see what's going on. Until then, it's Will, the Bowtie Sober Guy. Peace out.